The humming sound of the space station was something Ethan Cole had grown used to after only 3 weeks of living there. The deep, low vibration of the engines never stopped, and the metal walls always seemed to whisper softly. It was both comforting and lonely at the same time. Ethan was one of the few humans on Orbital Station 9, a place shared by more than 10 alien species. It was built to promote intergalactic friendship and knowledge exchange, at least according to the government's shiny poster he saw back on Earth. The truth was a bit more complicated. Not everyone liked humans. Some thought humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, or just plain noisy. Ethan tried to keep to himself, fixing minor systems in the engineering bay and eating the weird purple food they called protein cubes. The only thing that really made his days strange was his roommate, Tarila. Tarila was a Xeran, one of the more advanced races on the station. Her skin had a silver-blue color that shimmered under the light, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, like soft lanterns. She was tall, graceful, and very quiet. Too quiet. Ethan had tried small talk with her several times. "Hey, Tarila, what's that glowing thing you keep cleaning?" "It's a data crystal." "Oh, what does it do?" "It holds knowledge." And then silence. Every conversation ended like that, short, cold, and awkward. So, when Ethan woke up in the middle of the night to grab a snack, the last thing he expected was for her to block the door. He rubbed his eyes, still half asleep. What are you doing?" Tarila stood in front of the door, her arms crossed, her glowing eyes brighter than usual. "You cannot leave," Ethan frowned. "What do you mean I can't leave?" "I'm just getting noodles." Her gaze didn't move. "No, the door stays closed." He tried the panel anyway, but when he pressed it, the door refused to open. The lock lights turned red. Ethan laughed nervously. "Okay, funny joke. You hacked the door, didn't you?" Tarila didn't answer. She was staring at something, her handheld scanner, a small black device with green lights flickering across it. Her skin markings were glowing faintly in a strange rhythm. Ethan took a step back. "Tarila? What's going on?" She finally looked up, her voice lower than before. "Something is outside." Ethan blinked. "Outside the room? Outside the section?" She pointed to the wall, toward the hallway beyond it. "There is movement. Heat signatures. Unnatural ones." He didn't understand. "So? Probably a worker or some machine." "No," she said sharply, her glow dimming a little. "The station is on lockdown mode. There should be no movement at all." That was the first time he noticed it. The silence beyond the door. The hum of the main hallway fans was gone. The lights under the door were flickering weakly. Ethan's heart began to beat faster. "Lockdown? Why didn't they alert the crew?" "I disabled the comms in this room," Tarila said flatly. "You what?" She looked at him, calm but firm. "Noise attracts it." Ethan threw up his hands. "Attracts what?" Tarila's glowing eyes flickered again, this time with fear, a rare sight from her. "We call it a Dravik, a predator from the outer dark. It follows warmth and sound. It must have slipped in through the external ring when the repair drones came back." Ethan tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "You're saying there's some kind of monster loose on the station?" "That's ridiculous." A loud clang echoed through the wall, like something massive had hit the metal from the other side. The two froze. The sound came again, softer this time, like claws scraping metal. Then, on silence, Ethan whispered, "Was that—" "Yes," Tarila interrupted. "That was it." She moved quickly to the wall console, dimming the cabin lights until only the faint glow of her skin remained. The air vent stopped humming as she cut power to it. "What are you doing?" Ethan hissed. "Lowering heat," she said. "If it senses us, it will try to break through." He looked at her, confused and nervous. "And what happens if it breaks through?" Tarila looked back, expressionless. "We die." That shut him up. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Ethan couldn't tell. The temperature dropped steadily. He sat on the edge of his bunk, hugging himself to stay warm. Tarila stood by the window, scanning the corridor through a tiny viewing slit. He tried whispering again. "You seem calm about this." "I am not calm," she replied. "I am trained." "Trained for what?" "For survival. My people have fought Dravik before. They are faster than humans and see through heat. Hiding is the only option." Ethan nodded slowly. He didn't really know what to say. Everything felt unreal, like a nightmare. 1 minute, he was dreaming of warm noodles, and the next, he was trapped in a freezing room with an alien who looked like she could crush him with one hand. Another sound came. Closer this time, a faint dragging noise, followed by a slow rhythmic tap. Tarila froze. "It's moving along the corridor wall," she whispered. Ethan's stomach twisted. He crept closer to the door and pressed his ear against it. There it was, the soft hiss of something alive. He stepped back immediately. "Okay," he whispered. "I believe you." For the first time that night, Tarila looked almost relieved. She nodded. "Good, now stay quiet." They waited in the dark, listening. The sound passed, faded, and disappeared into the distance. Tarila let out a slow breath. Ethan whispered, "How long do we have to stay like this? Until it finds a way out or until station security arrives?" He sighed. "That could be hours." Yes, silence again. The cold was biting now. Ethan's teeth chattered softly, and he tried rubbing his arms for warmth. Tarila turned and picked something from her pack, a small metallic blanket. She handed it to him without a word. He took it, surprised. "Thanks. You produce too much heat," she said. "That is dangerous. The blanket will contain it." He wrapped himself tightly. "So I'm basically a walking target, huh?" Her glowing eyes softened slightly. "That is one way to say it." The hours crawled by. Ethan tried to distract himself by asking her questions, whispering softly. "You've really fought these things before?" "Yes, on Zyron Colony 12. They wiped out a whole outpost before we learned how to hide from them." "And you're not scared now?" She hesitated. "Fear is a signal to act wisely. I feel it. I control it." Ethan nodded slowly. "Humans usually just panic and hope for the best." "I noticed," she said, and for a moment, he thought he saw the hint of a smile on her alien face. The sound returned again, faint, almost like breathing. This time they both heard it through the wall near the air vent. Ethan's heart skipped. "It's here again," he mouthed. Tarila crouched near the vent, scanning. Her markings flashed in a rapid rhythm as she adjusted settings on her scanner. "It is testing for heat. It is learning." "That's not comforting," Ethan whispered. Suddenly the vent grill rattled slightly. Ethan jumped back. Tarila grabbed a metal rod from her toolkit, pressing it against the vent opening. The sound stopped. Silence. For a full minute, neither of them moved. Then Tarila slowly lowered the rod and stood again. It moved away. Ethan let out a shaky breath. "So this thing is intelligent?" "Yes," she said softly. "It adapts." He stared at her glowing eyes in the dark. "Then how do we beat it?" Her answer was immediate. "We don't, we survive." The cold deepened. Outside, the station's lights flickered again. Somewhere far away, a distant alarm echoed. Faint, distorted, and short-lived. The creature must have damaged more systems. Ethan shivered. He was beginning to realize how fragile humans really were out here, so dependent on machines, warmth, and air. But despite the fear, something inside him refused to sit still. He whispered, "You said it hunts heat. What if we trick it?" Tarila turned sharply. "Trick it?" "Yeah, fake a heat source, make it think we're somewhere else." Her brow furrowed slightly. "You have such strange ideas." "Welcome to being human," he said quietly. Tarila didn't answer, but her glowing eyes stayed on him longer than before. Outside the door, the shadows still moved. Inside the room, two unlikely roommates waited, one cold and trained, the other scared but thinking. And as the long alien night continued, neither of them knew that before dawn they would both owe their lives to the other. The lights in the room were still off. The soft blue glow of Tarila's skin was the only thing that stopped the darkness from swallowing everything. The air felt heavier now, colder, thinner. Ethan could almost see his breath when he exhaled. He sat against the wall, clutching the metallic blanket she had given him. His human body wasn't built for the freezing temperatures that Zyrans could tolerate. Every muscle in his body felt stiff. But he didn't complain, not anymore. Tarila was crouched near the console again, scanning the hallway. Her long, sharp fingers moved quickly across the screen, making adjustments. The scanner flickered softly in her hands. Ethan whispered, "Is it still out there?" She nodded once. "Yes, it is close." "How close?" "Too close," Ethan frowned. "Then what do? We can't just sit here forever." Tarila turned her head slowly toward him. "If we make any sound, it will hear. If we open the door, it will sense our heat. Sitting still is our only choice." He sighed quietly, trying not to make a noise. "You call that a choice?" She didn't respond. Her glowing eyes stayed fixed on the door. Minutes turned to hours. Ethan's mind began to drift between fear and exhaustion. The silence of space felt louder than any noise. The hum of the ship's power core, the background sound he always heard, was gone now. Everything was dead quiet. Suddenly a faint metallic scrape echoed from outside the room. It was slow and steady, like claws dragging against the wall. Tarila froze, holding up her hand, a signal for Ethan to stay silent. They listened. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Ethan's heart pounded. He could hear his own pulse in his ears. Then a faint vibration passed through the floor. Whatever was outside wasn't small. It was heavy and too heavy. Tarila looked at her scanner again. The green dots jumped. "It's right outside the corridor," she whispered, so soft he almost couldn't hear. Ethan looked at her glowing face and saw something new. Worry. She wasn't as calm as before. He swallowed hard. "You've fought these things before, right?" "Yes," she whispered. "And you survived?" "I did." "Well, how did you do it?" She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. "By not moving. By waiting for dawn." Ethan frowned. "Dawn? There's no dawn in space." "There is a power cycle," she said. "In 4 hours, the station's lights and systems will restart automatically. If the sensors come back online, the station's defenses might detect it and vent the section into space." "Might?" "That's not comforting," Ethan whispered. Tarila didn't reply. She seemed deep in thought, her hands trembling slightly and only for a second, before she forced herself still again. Ethan studied her. For someone who always acted calm and logical, she suddenly looked tired. The shadows under her eyes were visible even through her faint glow. He realized she hadn't slept either. He leaned closer and whispered, "You're scared too, aren't you?" Her head turned sharply toward him, surprised. "Scifians do not experience fear as you do." "Maybe not," he said quietly, "but I can see it. You're shaking." For a moment, her expression softened. "Fear is inconvenient," she admitted. "But it helps me stay alive." Ethan smiled faintly. "Now you sound human." Before she could answer, a deep thud shook the wall beside them. Dust fell from the ceiling. Both of them froze. The sound came again, louder, heavier. Something was pressing against the metal from the other side. Ethan mouthed silently, "It's trying to get in." Tarila nodded, moving quickly. She grabbed her toolkit and placed a small black orb on the floor. "Thermal dampener," she whispered. "It will hide our body heat for a short time." Ethan watched her activate it. The air shimmered faintly around them and the cold intensified. Then came the third thud, louder than before. The metal wall groaned under pressure. Ethan covered his mouth, afraid even to breathe. The noise stopped. Silence. After a long minute, Tarila checked her scanner again. The heat signature had moved, away from their door. Slowly, carefully, it disappeared down the corridor. Ethan let out a shaky sigh. "It's gone." "For now," she said. He slumped against the wall, his legs weak from tension. "How can something like that even exist?" Tarila's voice was low, almost distant. "There are things born in the deep dark between stars. They grow in the places where light never touches. My people found the first Dravik on a derelict mining ship. It had drained the crew of all heat, frozen them where they stood." Ethan rubbed his arms. "So it eats heat?" "Yes, it consumes warmth, energy, even the pulse of life." "Lovely," he muttered. Tarila didn't smile this time. She looked at him carefully. "Humans were not meant to live among such things." He met her gaze. "Maybe not. But humans adapt. We always have." That made her pause. "Adaptation," she said softly. "Yes, that is how your species survived your own planet." "Exactly," Ethan whispered. "And we're not going to stop now." She tilted her head slightly. "What are you planning?" He looked at her scanner, the blinking green dots, and then at the small heating coil near the wall. "If that thing hunts heat, then maybe we can use heat to trap it." "Trap it?" she repeated. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly, a small spark of confidence returning to his eyes. "We don't have weapons, but we can trick it, give it a false signal, lead it away from us." Tarila frowned. "That is dangerous." "If it detects movement, then it goes for the fake," he interrupted. "We make something hotter than us." She hesitated. Her glowing eyes studied him for a long time. "You think this will work?" He shrugged slightly. "No idea, but sitting here waiting to freeze doesn't sound better." For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Tarila finally nodded. "Show me." Ethan smiled faintly. Now you sound human again." He stood up carefully, avoiding any sudden movement that could make noise. He gathered the spare reflective sheets she used for repairs and a small heating coil from the corner. Using wire and tape, he began to build something that looked like a messy ball of metal and lights. Tarila watched him with quiet curiosity. "You are building a decoy. More like a moving campfire," he whispered. "It'll glow hot enough to make that thing think we're out there." She adjusted the scanner for him, setting the coordinates to the far end of the corridor. "If it works, it will chase the signal," Ethan smiled nervously. "Let's hope it's as dumb as it sounds." Tarila pressed a small switch. The reflective orb began to glow faintly, radiating warmth. She placed it near the air vent, and a faint hum filled the room. Outside, the corridor sensors spiked. The creature had noticed. They could hear it, that awful scraping sound again, growing louder. It was moving fast. Ethan's throat went dry. "It's taking the bait." The sound rushed past their door, down the hall, fading into the distance, then a crash. The sound of tearing metal. Then silence. Tarila looked at the scanner. The green dot blinked rapidly, then disappeared. She turned toward Ethan slowly. "You did it," he smiled weakly. "We did it." For a moment, they just stood there in the cold, breathing quietly. The silence now felt peaceful, almost safe. Tarila studied him closely, as if trying to understand something. "Humans," she said finally. "Your kind does not think like any other. You see danger and immediately begin to build." Ethan chuckled softly. "We're good at fixing things, even when everything's broken." She tilted her head again, her faint glow reflecting off his tired face. "Perhaps that is why your species is still alive." He smiled. "Maybe." They sat in silence again, waiting. Outside there was no sound, no scraping, no humming, no monster. Just the emptiness of the station and the faint hum of their hearts. After some time, Ethan's eyes grew heavy. The tension, the cold, and the exhaustion were finally too much. He dozed off, sitting against the wall. Tarila stayed awake, watching the scanner. She didn't rest. Her people didn't need much sleep. But as she looked at the sleeping human beside her, wrapped in a blanket and still clutching a broken tool like a weapon, something inside her shifted. She whispered softly, almost to herself. "Strange creature, fragile yet fearless." The scanner stayed quiet. For the first time since the lockdown began, she allowed herself to relax. But deep inside the metal walls of Orbital Station 9, far below the sleeping decks, a new signal flickered. Something else was moving, something the decoy hadn't fooled for long. Tarila looked at the screen and frowned. "It's not over," she whispered. And as the ship drifted through the dark void of space, the long night was far from finished. The room was still cold, but the first faint glow of the station's morning cycle lit the edges of the cabin. The long night had almost passed. Ethan rubbed his stiff arms and legs, trying to wake up properly. His blanket had shifted, and a few sparks from the heating coil still flickered on the floor. Tarila remained alert, sitting beside the scanner, her silver-blue skin reflecting the dim light. She had not slept. Ethan noticed her glowing eyes were sharper than ever, scanning every corner of the room. "Morning," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "Morning is a human concept," she replied without turning. Ethan chuckled. "Right, station cycle then." He stood, stretching carefully. "So and what now?" "The creature is gone, right?" Tarila shook her head. "Not gone, hiding, observing, learning." Ethan frowned. "Learning?" "Yes, the decoy tricked it, but it will adapt quickly. We cannot just stay here. If we do, it will return, and we may not be able to survive next time." Ethan thought for a moment. "Then we need a plan. Not just hiding." Tarila finally looked at him, her glowing eyes studying him carefully. "You suggest what?" "Human ingenuity," Ethan said, smiling faintly. "We lure it somewhere it cannot survive. Then we deal with it." Her brow furrowed. "You mean, fight it?" Ethan shrugged. "Maybe not fight exactly, but we can flush it into a trap. We have the station systems, vents, and plasma discharge lines. If we use them right, it will have no choice but to follow heat toward the vent, and we can end it there." Tarila considered this for a moment. Then slowly she nodded. "It is reckless." "Yes," Ethan said, grinning. "That's why humans are good at it." The plan was risky, but it was the only option. Tarila guided Ethan through the narrow maintenance shafts that ran along the station walls. The creature's heat signature was faint now, but sensors showed it was still nearby, moving quietly through the lower corridors. Careful, she whispered. One wrong move and it will detect you. Ethan crawled slowly, gripping the metal rails. His arms ached from the cold, and his muscles protested with every movement. The narrow space made it difficult to see more than a few inches ahead. Tarila stayed behind, monitoring the creature through the scanner and sending quiet updates. Left, move left now, Ethan obeyed. The corridors twisted and turned, but he trusted her guidance. Every sound of metal echoing made his pulse spike, but he focused on the task. Finally, he reached the vent near the reactor chamber. The vent grill was partially open, leaking small puffs of warm air, exactly what the creature would follow. He paused. Okay, this is it. Do it carefully, Tarila instructed. I will distract it from here. Ethan took a deep breath and twisted the manual valve on the vent. A sudden blast of plasma heat surged upward, enough to make the metal grate glow red-hot. The warm air escaped into the corridor. Outside, the creature sensed the heat immediately. The sensors showed it moving rapidly toward the vent, drawn to the strongest signal it had ever detected. Ethan hurried back along the maintenance shaft, while Tarila activated false signals and reflective panels to keep the Dravik focused on the trap. The corridor echoed with distant metallic screeches as the creature charged blindly toward the vent. Ethan climbed out into the cabin, panting, and looked at Tarila. Did it work? She checked the scanner. Yes, it is trapped near the reactor vent. The plasma will disintegrate it if it continues moving forward. He let out a shaky laugh. We did it. Tarila's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, but there was something like admiration in them. Humans, you improvise faster than any species I know, Ethan grinned. That's what we do, survive. The Dravik's screech echoed one last time, then silence. The scanner showed only a faint residual heat pattern. It was over. Ethan sank to the floor exhausted. His body ached and his lungs felt tight from the cold and stress. Tarila handed him a small energy bar. Eat, you need strength. He accepted it gratefully. Thanks, and crew. Tarila blinked. Crew? He nodded. Yeah, we're partners now. Survived the night together. That makes us crew. For the first time she laughed. A strange musical sound that seemed almost human. The glow of her skin softened as she allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They looked out the small viewing port together. The station's lights returned fully, illuminating the endless black void of space. Stars twinkled in the distance. It seemed peaceful now, calm after the chaos. Ethan stretched, feeling his body slowly thaw from the cold. You know, he said, I never thought I'd say this, but that was kind of fun. Tarila tilted her head. Fun? Surviving a predator from the void is fun? Ethan laughed. Yeah, in a terrifying, exhausting way. And it reminds me why humans are still alive. We don't just sit and wait, we act. We adapt, we survive. She studied him silently for a moment. You are reckless. Maybe, he said with a grin. But it works. The door to their cabin finally unsealed. It had been locked all night, holding them inside for safety. Ethan stretched again, savoring the warmth of normal air. Tarila stepped aside. You may leave, she said formally. Ethan paused. But why did you stay with me? You could have left or sent a signal to command. She glanced at him, her glow softening. Because I did not want to. You are fragile yet capable. I would not let you die when I could prevent it. That is logical. Ethan smiled faintly. Or maybe it's because humans are worth saving. Tarila didn't answer immediately. She just stared at him, and for a moment there was something unspoken between them. Mutual respect, trust, a bond forged during the long night of fear and survival. Ethan looked out the port again, watching the stars drift past the station. You know, he said softly, most humans would have panicked. But we didn't, not completely. We used our heads, our creativity, our stubbornness. That's what makes us, well, human. She studied him again. Perhaps your species is remarkable, he grinned. Thanks. You're not so bad yourself. For an alien predator fighting expert. Tarila tilted her head and allowed a small flicker of amusement in her glow. You speak boldly for a human, but I believe you. Outside, the station floated silently through the void. The Dravik was gone. Systems were stabilizing, and for the first time since Ethan arrived, he felt safe, not just safe, but proud. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were clever, determined, adaptable. And as he looked at Tarila, standing beside him, he realized something else. Humans could inspire even the most advanced aliens. For the rest of the day, they would rebuild, repair, and prepare for the next challenge. But Ethan knew one thing. No matter what threats the stars held, humanity would survive. They always had. And sometimes survival came with unexpected allies. He looked at Tarila again. "We made a good team last night." "Yes," she said softly. "A good team." And with that, the long night in the void ended. Dawn in space was not like dawn on Earth, but for Ethan and Tarila, it was a new beginning. A beginning of trust, respect, and a partnership that could face anything the universe threw at them.